Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. Tonight, I'm very excited to welcome to the show Jennifer Marie. Jennifer is an author and coach and the founder of Jennspire, a business dedicated to fostering understanding, acceptance, and empowerment for individuals, families, and organizations navigating the complexities of gender identity. Welcome to the show, Jennifer Marie.
Hi, Emily. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
My favorite question to start with, because it's a nice little softball one, is how did you choose a name that suited you?
I never really thought of a name too much, to be honest, until about April 14th, 2021, when I went online and I was going to try and join a photo contest, and I had to create a Facebook account. And when it came to creating this Facebook account, it was like, what name do I want to use? Because I'm not going to use my old Facebook account. And so I came down to this, and it was like, what name should I use? And honestly, it took 2 seconds, and it came to me. Jennifer was one of the names my sister would call me when I was doing something girly or when I was dressed up growing up. And so I just knew I didn't need to create a name. I already had one.
I love it. And I love those ways that family helps come up with the name, even if it's unintentional.
Yeah, it made things easier. I didn't have to do any work, and go, now what name do I want either? It was like, I already have one. This is fantastic.
Were there things in your transition that sort of aligned with causing that self-doubt? Because it's like, shouldn't this just feel right to me? Shouldn't this just be the way I am?
Well, first off, I call it the awkward years. I call it the awkward stage, really. Like we all go through it, and I went through less of it. And the way I encourage my clients to do as well is if you can go through some of the awkward stage. If you can do that before you transition, like socially, it kind of makes things a little bit easier. So for me, like I started on hormones in November of 2022, and I came out about a year later, October 5th, 2023, and I went through a lot of the awkwardness. I started growing my hair out. By the time I pierced my ears, I was doing a full face regimen and all of these things, right? And by the time I came out, I looked very androgynous, very non-binary in that presentation. I was like needing to feel more like Jen all the time, and so I went through this where no one was watching. And I recommend anybody that's wanting to feel more feminine or in these ways, even when you're not transitioning or whatever, when no one's watching, act how you want to act, like move how you want to move. Like I did that. I changed how I walked. I changed how I started being more fluid and with everything, with how I moved in things when no one was watching. And I mean, I'd go around a corner and sometimes I'd walk that way. It was kind of fun. But that really, it was kind of a practicing in a sense for a while. But then when I started on hormones, for me, everything got looser. And honestly, it started immediately within that first month, it became more natural. I was at the time married and did not want my wife at the time to know that I was on hormones. And so I was like, oh gosh, we got to hide things. We have to don't move that way. Like by the time I came out, somebody told me after when I came out to them, they said, you sashayed, and I kind of immediately I thought you were gay. I was like, yeah, nope, that's definitely not the case. So we all go through this awkward stage. I went through some of it after I came out too, because it takes, I don't know, probably a year and a half or so. Typically, I think, at least for me, that's what it took. But it's a process we go through.
I've heard it before, so you're not the first, but wow, starting hormones before coming out to your spouse that's a bold move. That shows, just sort of how desperate you are to get out of this and to start living your true self.
I didn't tell her about it because I had told her I was a crossdresser before we got married. And it was the hardest part of our marriage and all these things. And we kept talking about these things. And even as I realized who I was, I shared it with her all the way up until the point that I was transgender, was going to transition. And she's Southern Baptist and always made it very clear she was never going to stay with me and not okay if I transitioned and all these things. And apparently, one point in my life, I even promised I was never going to transition because I never thought I'd be here. she made it abundantly clear that this was not going to be okay. And so I was like, I needed to start on hormones without her knowledge because I needed to know for me if I felt right in my body before I blew up my marriage. It took me 2 weeks on hormones to finally feel right in my body for the first time in my life. And I realized, yeah, I got to move out. That was kind of like my last confirmation. Like I knew that I was transgender and I thought I needed to do this. But before I just like made that last step, I was like, I want to try this. And I'm glad I did the way I did it.
I love, and I'm sort of jealous of the people who are able to realize that they're transgender, accept themselves, and just go right into everything. And let's move. Let's get this done. But I also appreciate the fact that all of our journeys are different, and what's right for one person isn't right for another person. And along those lines, a similar thought is, oh, if I'd transitioned earlier, if only I'd transitioned earlier. And I'm pretty confident after years of retrospection, I'm pretty confident that I transitioned at the time that was right for me. And, I'm on the path that is the right one, considering all the stuff that I had going on. What have you run into with your clients and the people that you've talked to?
That's exactly how I feel about my life. Like I feel like things happen for a reason. I wouldn't have my kids if I would have transitioned earlier. All types of things in my life, and so I believe things happen for a reason at the time they did. I think the biggest problem that we make as gender diverse people is that we all compare ourselves to each other, and this is a big topic that we're talking about in my community called the Jennspire Sisterhood, and we're doing in our group coaching session tomorrow. We're going to be talking about how comparison is such a problem, and because it really messes all of us up. I mean, yeah, there can be some good, you can learn some things, whatever, but it brings up your dysphoria to a new level. And so I encourage people to take a step back and look at one of my secrets for me is I've always been the person that has gone and like said, I'm going to look at my history, like where have I come from and where am I at now, and stop focusing as quite as much on everybody else and where am I going. It's hard, but I've done a lot of work to do that.
From my personal story, I started on Instagram. That was, once I kind of put the pieces together, I wanted to find other trans people. So I went straight to Instagram and started to connect to trans women. And I think it took me a while to realize the dangers of what I had done, getting wrapped up in the social media. And, it was in the era where filters had started. It was, Snapchat was well in, getting pretty old even, and everybody was used to using filters. And so, the social media posts just in general are so curated that you can't really trust it, but then you add filtering and things. And yeah, it's a massive pitfall for you because all you see is beauty and perfect femininity, and oh my God, this person knows how to take a beautiful selfie and I can't even do that, those sort of things.
I've always been the person that try to use hardly any filters. That's kind of what I've always tried to be as real as possible with people. That's one thing I think my followers have really resonated with. But social media was like one of the biggest tools of my journey. It was my therapy. Honestly, I grew all this following online because I was sharing the most inner parts of my soul with random strangers because I felt safe to do it. And like the fact that I didn't have my last name out there, it wasn't anywhere tied to my old life, all of these things. And so I'd share these deep personal posts, trying to understand myself, but also kind of sharing it because it was helping other people. And I created a community where I could share everything with people and talk personally with people when I didn't have anybody here in the Midwest or in my area that I could talk to.
The before and after posts, those, the journey, this is what I look like before and this is what I look like now. That was the reason I was able to actually start transition, I believe. It was always something that was so far out. There was no way. It was a completely different life and all of that. There's no way that it could apply to me. And then I just, got sort of obsessed with those. And I'm like, oh, but you can go from this to that. it's possible. And yeah,
Yeah.
so I definitely credit Instagram specifically for allowing me to start my journey and be as successful at it as I have.
I think it's a good point. I think it's a great point, and like you talk about the before and after, or the transformation Tuesday nowadays, what we do, right? Like
Mhm.
where it does make you see like, oh wow, they don't look at all the same, like, and what could I do with that? And then you also get into like the the face app, like how can I make myself, like, what could I look like? Now I can see the eye roll too, and it is a very dangerous game. And I always try to tell people, take it with a grain of salt. Like you're never gonna look like what you want to. And
No.
and and
Mm-mm.
to be honest, like I feel more natural and beautiful the way that I am than anything I ever created in Face App that I did. But it also like was my way at that time of like when I couldn't dress and feel like I wanted to feel, I could do it instantly. And so it was kind of a little bit of gratification in that way too. Yeah.
Yeah, because that, the pitfalls we were talking about, the dangers we were talking about social media, about comparing yourself to others, when when it's comparing you to yourself, it's really easy to think of that in terms of what you should look like, even
Yeah.
more than what you could look like. It's like, well, I should be able to look like this, so why the hell, like, what's wrong? Why am I, kind of a thing. It opens up a whole nasty can of worms. And luckily, I think it was really, really, really early on where I realized, like, I'm never gonna look like any of these, and I need to stop messing with it and just be what I'm gonna be. And that was an important one. What was it that took you over that line? You said you identified as a crossdresser, and semi, at least semi publicly, you were out to your wife. What was it that helped you get over that hurdle from identifying and personifying crossdresser versus trans woman?
I was actually out, not even was I outside the LGBTQIA plus community, I was against it. Uh, I was and still am a Christian, but I was against it, and I was a lot of repression. Eventually, I went through some stages and learned some things and had some resources where I realized that I call myself dual gender, bigender, and then I call myself gender fluid without the fluid, and I realized that's total BS. There is no gender fluid without the fluid. I went on a girls' weekend retreat, stayed in a house with about 9 other girls, and I say girls, but none of us were transitioning. And we stayed in a house in Atlanta, and it was fun. I knew the weekend would be fun, affirming. My ex was really against me going to this thing, and I was like, I got to do this for me,
Mm,
But I wasn't anticipating there'd be anybody that was transitioning there. And we met up with a girl, Erin Baker, who I'd seen on Instagram, and I didn't know she was going to be there. And she started talking to us, and we had a fun time. But we were sitting at this table, and I sat across from her at dinner, and she started. I told her my story. I'm a very open person. For anybody that doesn't know, like I share too much, and that's always been my thing, and is what it is. But I share too much, and then she shared all of her story, and as she shared her story, for the first time in my life, I started bawling, and I said, "Your story resonates with me so deeply, and I feel like I've been questioning it for a while. I've been calling myself trans questioning that I feel like I'm transgender." And she said, "I think you are too." And then I did some other steps after that to kind of confirm it. And then yeah, it was a that was my first aha moment
mhm.
that I needed to do this.
Oh God, you talk about the sort of internalized homo and transphobia because of upbringing and stuff like that. I just love to bring that up when I can and share with people that these internal struggles, this fight that you have, and the fact that you have a hard time accepting others sometimes in your group is all part of the process. Like it is a whole process, and you can't think negatively of yourself because you're having some of these thoughts and some of these struggles, even if like like yeah, it's bizarrely self-defeating, thinking negatively of the people in your community that you're trying to join and be part of.
Absolutely. Repression is a really powerful thing. That's why I say a lot of people who are spreading hate about on my Instagram or things like that are really repressing something.
Hmm.
And we are proof that that is true. You
Yeah,
know, like
as a
I'm proof because I literally judged my gay friends and like because I was queer myself and I wouldn't admit it to myself.
yeah, if you're trying to fight yourself, it's really hard to accept others who, and I think that that's one of the big things that brings some of that hate towards us, right? Is other people seeing that we're able to be ourselves, we're able to live in ways that they think that they can't. And so I think that's a deep rooted source for some of the vitriol that we get. You've
Mhm.
mentioned multiple times being a public persona on social media, and you just sort of touched on it there. How was that process for you getting past the hate and the external doubt of who you really are as you're trying to come into acceptance and love of who you are yourself?
Well, luckily, when I was in my most vulnerable stage, when I was like sharing these intimate parts of my soul, things were not as loosey goosey as they are now. People weren't able to just say whatever the hell they wanted to, and like on social media. I started on Facebook, and then I came in Instagram, and I didn't hardly receive any hate at that point. I was just like growing it. I was still public. I was public. I wasn't private, but I was still a public account, and it started growing quickly and having people be nice and stuff. It wasn't until probably the last year or so that like the hate really started to really flood in. I occasionally get like a couple nasty emojis or something, but whatever kind of thing. But now I receive hundreds of thousands of hate messages a week between all my social media accounts. And it took, at first, I was like, okay, whatever. And then like I kind of thought, oh, I can kind of like, first I thought I was going to hide it all. I was like, I'm just going to hide each one, and like, my followers don't need to see this. It's not good for them. It's not good for me, and then I realized, oh, it's engagement. And so I'm like, no, I'm actually going to like let it go out there. And, and I started like looking at it. I might've replied a little bit too. And then it really started to like really flood in and hundreds, thousands. Right. And I was like, I'm not going to look at it. But when I really saw the numbers that were coming in, uh, it was daunting about how much hate, how much, not even the comment typically as much as how much people hated me.
Hmm.
And then I changed my mindset and I started just doing something silly. And I was like, I'm gonna do a dance each time I see somebody say something nasty, especially if I read their comment. I'm gonna like go, like thanks for the engagement, asshole.
Hmm.
Like that's exactly kind of what I did, because it was like, you are propelling me. Nowadays, I receive all kinds of it, and most of my engagement is from haters because there's volumes of it, and I think there's bots out there doing this stuff too. People need to realize, but but for me, I have to look at it in a way of that I know exactly who I am, and so I don't really care what everybody else thinks. And I've got to this confidence point of my life, and I love helping people do that, where I don't care about what anybody thinks except for the people that I care about, and I care what they think.
Hmm. What did you find more difficult in your transition, becoming coming to a level of self-acceptance or telling others and making it public?
Accepting it for myself, because I fought it for over 30 years. I started when I was 4 years old, and I cross dressed hundreds of times in my life. And when everybody was gone, every single time when people were gone, I dressed every time, and I got caught once, but but I uh, but I dressed and never allowed myself to think that it was anything more than just cross dressing. And I didn't even put a term to it then. I just like when I wasn't doing it, when I got a computer, I was looking up, like men dressed as women or gender bender things. It's like literally trying to find these things. And the next stage after that was seeing stories. I found Story Site and like Fiction Mania and those things, and then that's when it became sexual a little bit for me, because everything in your teen is sexual. And when you read those stories, it was kind of my way to release in that way.
Yeah.
But even then, I was still like, no, I'm not transgender. Literally 5 years ago, I was looking at trans people and thinking, I feel so bad for them. They are so confused. Why, like that's, and that sounds like an awful way to live, like that just sounds awful. And gosh, was I repressing? I mean, look at me now. Like, was I repressing myself or what? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was the tough part for me. When it came to telling other people, I came up with a whole entire system. I came out to 100 people before I came out publicly. And it was hard. It was a lot, but I came out to people one by one in order that I feel like people were going to be accepting or at least kind and understand.
Yeah.
So, yep.
That's definitely something we talk a lot about here, is build your support network. Start with the people that you know are going to support you no matter what, and work out from there.
I tell people the secret to how I came out to 100 people, I didn't hardly have a single bad interaction, was the fact, here's how I said it. I don't need you to accept me. I know who I am. I just need you to be able to support me and be kind. And so that's kind of where it was for me.
That's a really great way of doing it, saying, I'm not looking for anything from you. You don't have to, expel any particular energy or whatever. I just want to share this with you, and, want you to accept me for who I am, and we'll deal with the rest later, kind of. I like that.
Yeah. I came out to a Baptist pastor in my Rotary Club that way. And literally like had those conversations with people like that. And it wasn't my pastor by any means or whatever, but it was literally like people that were hard, like really conservative people. And they were all kind and asked good questions and had great conversations every time.
Mm-hmm. Was there anybody that accepted you that you weren't expecting, or that you were pretty sure wouldn't accept you?
Yeah, there's someone that, and I talk about him a couple times in my best-selling book, Ask Me Anything. And his name's Billy. And it was this older Black gentleman that I'd become friends with through business. And he and I were talking about going to business together at one point before he knew about me. And he's very Christian and conservative. And I thought, Billy's going to tell me exactly what he thinks. And I was like, this could either go really bad or this could go like, okay. And so what happened was the day before I'd arranged to have lunch with Billy, I went to an LGBT chamber event. And I walked in for the first time ever with Jen on my name tag, in guy mode or whatever kind of, in that way. And I had Jen on my name tag. And I walked in, and the president goes, guess who's here? I was like, who? And they're like, Billy. And I was like, no way. Billy's here? And then I finally saw him, and I was like, I guess I can't go anywhere without running into you. And he's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, and I showed him my name tag. He's like, Jen, that's really cool. Okay. Like, I'm here because my son told me he's gay. And I just told him, I love you. I didn't say but I always love you, or it's okay kind of thing, whatever. It was just like, I just love you because I just love him. And I was like, dang, Billy. Like, it was just like the best response I could have. And then we had a fantastic conversation the next day at lunch where I told him my story, and it was beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I usually save audience questions for the second half, but I thought that this one tied in so well with what we were saying that we might as well get into it now. Someone in the chat asked, what happens when you don't know who you are, when you haven't figured that out yet? And I'm assuming what they're asking, and correct me if I'm wrong here in the chat, is getting to the feeling that you need to make a change, that something's wrong, and you want to start doing, you at least want to start exploring, and you don't have all the answers yet. How would you suggest somebody navigate that?
We put too much pressure on. You have to figure everything out so quickly. Like I don't know who I am. Where am I going to go? Like, and I know I did the same kind of thing. And you have to take a step back and think, that's okay. And then focus on what makes me feel happy. And where can I find that middle ground? Like, where can I find a balance that I will be happy in my life? And then you try to find a balance, and I call it gender equilibrium, where your life and your gender identity balance. And when it doesn't balance, you change something up, and then you come back to it, and you can find that balance. That's one thing I help my clients do.
Mhm. Have your goals shifted as you've moved through your transition? Were there things that you started out going like, oh, I'm going to do this, this, and this, or I'm going to avoid this, this, and this that have changed? Have you gone through it?
Yeah, when you talk about surgery, I was going to have everything. I was going to have facial feminization. I was going to have breast augmentation. I was going to have vaginoplasty. I was going to have make sure my trach was shaved. Like maybe more than that. I don't know. I was very big on having all these surgeries, and I let hormones take their course. And I've only I first had a trach shave, so you can see a teeny little tiny scar that I'm still working on getting rid of. And then last year, I did orchiectomy just because I wanted to be able to not have testosterone ever produced in my body again. And I wanted a little bit of easier tucking and some things like that. And I'm preparing right now for the rest. And I realized that I grew a natural C cup, just the natural hormone way, which I'm in love with. And I even said back when I was a B, I thought I can make that work, like it's okay, and my face, for me at least, was beautiful in the sense that like it kind of just shaped the way I wanted it to. And so I think we put too much pressure on, I have to look this exact way, kind of like we talked about with like the face app, like you've got to look this exact way to be feminine or all of these things. And I thought that I had to do all those things. I even thought about having vocal surgery, to be honest. That was one of my big ones, was like, I ended up, I was, yeah, you say, ooh, yeah, I know. And I'm like, and it works for some people. And you see some people on Instagram that it works great for. And there's even been times recently where I've been like, oh, but my voice could be better. I could do that. I did vocal therapy through a local hospital here to practice and make my voice more feminine for me. And I didn't do it for the world. I did it for me. Because even when I was cross-dressing, that's what I was doing, or it felt I was doing, right? There was more to it. It was like I had to change my voice to feel more like Jen, and I wanted to feel like me. And so that was how I did it for me. Literally like talking and singing or doing things. That's where I started changing my voice, was like I'd sing in my car. I listened to all kinds of girl songs like Taylor Swift or something and just sing along with it and change my voice. And I was doing it the completely wrong way. I was like just restricting my voice, like restricting everything up here. And then I learned through vocal therapy, it's all about pushing it forward and rather than just restricting your vocal cords. If you think that everything that you want or think's going to happen the way that it does, your expectations are going to be blown away, because transition is never what you expect it's going to be.
Yeah.
Ever.
That is a key point. Whatever you have set out as this is the way it's going to go, it's not. It's just not. There are too many factors that, your body, the your government, the medical system, your job and your insurance, all of those sort of things. Everything can play a part in it. So you've had just the trach shave and the orchiectomy. So you haven't gotten too far into it. Now, from what I've heard of like FFS and even GCS, bottom surgery, that the tracheal shave is the most painful. How was your experience with that?
No, not for me at all.
No?
I
Okay.
mean, it was easy for me. Like, it was just, I laid in bed for like a day or two, I think, or whatever, and I probably didn't need to do fully that. And I came out, I wasn't in a ton of pain or whatever. When I came out of orchiectomy, I was in pain. I was sitting on like pillow and like, and my friend drove me, and I was like, oh my gosh, every bump, you could feel every bump. And I was like, oh no. And so, no, I think that was a lot easier. And I obviously know that when I do vaginoplasty here in a couple of years that I'm preparing for, I expect it to be a whole lot worse than that. And I always say all of these surgeries are things that we go through. I mean, heck, I've gone through electrolysis, laser hair removal. My dog's talking. All of these things that we go through them for a reason, and they are proof that this is real and this is important. Because why the hell would I be doing this if I didn't need to?
Yeah. We all I've even talked about it recently, a couple weeks ago, having problems with dysphoria coming in and feeling sort of negatively about my results here and there. I feel like we all, even at late stages in our transition, have moments of dysphoria and, kind of questioning ourselves, questioning the way we look, all of those things. What do you do in those moments when something like that'll strike you to find that validation in your identity and just feel like yourself?
Well, one, I try to focus on the fact that all of us look in the mirror and we still see the previous self, unless you've had maybe facial feminization or something like that. And I look at it and think about how many people have told me that I don't see that. And I also look back at my old pictures and think how much I've changed. And I also try to redefine how femininity is, and building that self-confidence that I really focus on is like, and if I'm really struggling with that, I guess in a sense, I try to avoid the mirror a little bit too, and give myself some self-love. I think self-love is a very important thing. All of these things that I used to say, were like, this is kind of silly or whatever, like I'll do affirmations or say something positive to myself in a mirror. There's nothing wrong with that. And actually, it's really proven that it can really help. You're beautiful. You are strong.
Another thing that we kind of talk about a lot here, and it is an important thing, especially kind of going back to that old social media talk that we had at the beginning, looking away from what you want to achieve, what other people have achieved, what other people look like, and instead looking back, looking at where, how far you've come, what it was before, and really reminding yourself, because there is that little bit of a disconnect. You see yourself in the mirror and you're still seeing the old you, but you're not. You think you are, and you've got to go back and look at some of the old photos and just, open up that shoebox and look at those and just go, oh, okay, that's right. That's what I look like. And yes, now that comparison, I can totally see the change. Whereas, when you're relying on this image in your brain of what you used to look like, it's distorted because so much of it is gone and you don't even realize it.
That's why I say focus on the past instead of like, where do I want to be? It's way better to look about like, this is where I've come from and this is where I am now. And yeah, you're right. Because it's every day by day, we see the day by day change of us. And it's even like, let's say when I look at my kids, I say, they don't look that different day to day. But when I look back at a picture of it and I go, oh my gosh, you look like that a year ago. Holy moly. I do the same thing with myself. I look at myself and I'll look back like 2 months ago and think, oh my gosh, I look so different now. This is amazing. We put too much focus on where we want to be. Like, you want your hair to be long, and sometimes you don't appreciate where it is.
Yeah.
I tried to be different in that way, and as I was transitioning, people were like, "You could get hair extensions," and I'm like, "Yeah, I could," but I also like the fact that I'm doing just like a cis woman does, and they just grow their hair out slowly their entire life, and then and I'm enjoying all the stages of my hair, and so I did my best to do that.
Yeah, it can take a long time. I got to the point of just like not cutting my hair for my entire transition, and I think it was maybe a little over 2 years ago now. I finally was like, okay, my ends are so split. Things look terrible. I need to get this cut, and so I went in and I actually. my hair was getting to the point where anytime I sat in any kind of chair, it was getting caught. It was that long, and it was just getting too terrible. And I'm like, okay, just chop it. I had him take about 15 inches off, and got it back up to about just below shoulder length. And I was just like,
Yeah.
this is really cute. And I mean, like, there were some serious pieces of hair on the ground, and I'm like, no, I really like this.
Uh-huh.
And now it's kind of back out to being about the same length again. And yeah, it's fun when you can get to that level of like, oh, I need to chop my hair off. That feels wonderfully feminine too.
Absolutely. And I will say when you even talk about how you didn't cut your hair, and I tell people, like, I think one of my secrets was that, like, I trimmed off a little bit every 3 or 4 months or whatever it was, and help my hair grow.
Hmm.
I've only let my hair's only grown for about 2.5 years to get this long. So yeah, it's hair's a big thing. Hair's a big thing for sure. My kids cut hair, sometimes, like, their own hair, and I'll get really mad at them for it or whatever, and I say, if anyone ever comes to my hair, you have no idea how much trouble you're going to be in.
This is not something we
You
joke about. No, you do not come anywhere
you
near
do
me
not.
with those scissors.
There's no joking about my hair. We go, we don't do
Touch it and die. Sorry, that's just the way it is. I
it.
love you, but touch it and die.
Pretty much, yeah, yeah.
I'm assuming that you have a pretty long list here, but is there anything that you feel that you've been able to accomplish in your life because of the fact that you're trans?
My biggest thing is my book, my business, all of these things. I wouldn't be able to help the people that I help if it weren't for going through the struggles that I went through in my life.
Mhm.
I went through a lot of things and gotten me where I needed to be able to help the world. I'm the resource that I needed when I was growing up. That especially when I was trying to figure out who I was, and I would have paid somebody to help me kind of, like, work and figure some of these things out. And that's exactly what I do with my clients. I help people, like, find out, where do you want to go, who are you, where do you want to go, and how do we get there. And that's kind of that's what I love doing, and it brings me so much immense joy, being part of other people's journeys.
What is your favorite thing that you have learned through your journey, either about yourself or the world around you?
I think people are way more accepting. People are more loving than I thought they would be for me. Like, the people around me, like, and maybe it's also how I present to the world, and just be kind to me. That's all I need. But I've also learned that the beauty of creation and all of it, like, we are the beautiful part of this world. This is the part that I was, like, literally trying to say, like, this was wrong. And we are the beautiful part of this world. Diversity is beautiful. And that's what I get frustrated with when it comes to the world and how my old views were. That's what makes the world beautiful. It's like that, when not everybody's exactly the same.
What advice do you have to pass on to young or closeted trans folks out there?
I know it's hard right now. And I know that you feel, like, restricted, or you don't know who you are. It's okay to try on, it's okay to explore and try different things. And even if the world stops you from being how you want to be, then know that you're always valid in exactly who you are. And it's okay to explore, and it's okay to not have all the answers. And you're beautiful, and you'll get there when you need to be.
This has been wonderful. Jennifer Marie, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. It's been wonderful to have you here.
It's been so great, Emily. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Follow me on social media at LUV Jennifer Marie. I would love to see you there.